Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. Stories of people that have been impacted by the healing ministry of Loma University Medical Center, or people that have impacted this medical institution. Our special guest today is Don Pryor, one of those individuals that have made a remarkable impact upon the institution, and one who's also been a recipient of the healing ministry. Don, it's good to have you here. We have people from around the world that are watching and want to learn a little bit about your background and about your journey. And tell us where you're from and about your educational background.
Born in Van Hook, North Dakota, on a cold December night, 42 below, my dad tells me, when he brought my mother and me home from the hospital.
42 below.
Yep.
Okay.
And then a year or so later moved to Flandreau, South Dakota, where I grew up. Went to public school there for 8 years, then to Plainview Academy in Redfield, South Dakota for 4 years, and had a lot of fun there, 120 students, 18 in our senior class.
Wow, from Plainview Academy, because I remember I've known some of my friends and background that went to Plainview Academy, but they had that many kids there.
Yeah, at that time, yeah.
And then?
To Union College for 4 years.
And what did you study in school?
I took history and physical education and a minor in business.
Okay.
And then went 2 years there. The first year there, I had my way completely paid because I had worked for a farmer near Redfield, South Dakota by the name of Merlin Anderson. After my junior year in the academy.
I knew Merlin. He
was
in Lincoln. Yeah, he was in Lincoln.
Yeah, great guy. He and Lois Anderson were fine people. And so the second summer after my senior year, he gave me a choice. I could work for $125 a month, room and board included, of course, or I could put in 100 acres of grain on a piece of property that I could rent. Wasn't the best soil, but I guess being a little bit of a gambler at heart, I took the land and the crop.
So you had an opportunity working, getting a steady income, which probably $120 was a pretty good deal at that time.
That wasn't bad.
Or you could venture out and you had an opportunity to really do something.
Yeah, and I took the crop, and I had enough money when everything was said and done. I paid off the landowner his amount of grain that he deserved, and I paid for my first year at Union College.
So that's where you begin developing your business venture, okay?
And then sophomore year was a little tougher because I followed the harvest after the freshman year all the way from Texas all the way to North Dakota with Merlin's brother, Russell Anderson, and Mr. Johnson, and Jay Johnson was his name, and Ernie Johnson, his son. So the four of us, we had 2 combines and 2 trucks, followed the harvest.
All the way from
Texas to North Dakota. I dropped off in South Dakota, and the Johnsons went on to North Dakota. And, you know, I made a decent living, but I didn't have enough to really go back to school, but I went back. And then I stayed out after my sophomore year. It was after World War II. It was in the 50s. Or actually late 49, 48, 49, I think it was. And I didn't have enough money to go back for my junior year. So my mother said, take over one of the schools, country schools here in South Dakota. And I said, I've only been to college 2 years.
As a teacher, you mean?
Yeah, where they were taking kids out of high school to teach these little country schools because teachers were scarce. So I decided to do that. My mother had taught school, country school, so she said, I'll help you. So the school I took over was had been taught the year and a half before by the man that had been my principal, Bill Keene, during my 8 years. And he was a big 6'5", 250, 70 pound man. And he had gotten along great there, but he was running for county treasurer. And so he had dropped out now, and I had to replace him. And I was a little bit concerned about that. There were 18 boys and 3 girls. So my mom said, well, go up and talk to Mr. Keene. I know him well. I said, well, I do too. But anyway, we went up there and he said, Don, you won't have any problem. He said, lady teachers have a terrible time out there. He said, the two before me, he said, got run off by the students. But he said, you like sports, as I recall? And he said, go out there and get those kids interested in sports, and remember, you're the boss. And so we had a great year, really neat. Got married that summer and went back, finished school 2 years at Union College.
Union College,
yeah.
Okay. And then where'd you go?
Well, North Dakota. As Dean of Boys, Lloyd Davis was the principal that hired me. And there were 8 of us graduating from Union College that wanted to be Dean of Boys. And there were only, I think, 4 or 5 positions going to be, going to be open. And Lloyd called me out of the class. All the principals were there for some meeting. Called me out of the class and interviewed me and said, well, I'm going to talk to several of the guys that are available. Well, that night I was playing on I was married, but I was playing on a basketball team downtown. And in those days, you know, that wasn't the greatest thing to do. So I go down to the basketball game and walk out on the floor, and here sits all these principals from all the schools in the union there. And I thought, oh boy, you're going to keep laying bricks for a living. And anyway, we had a good game. Lloyd came up to me afterwards. He says, you're hired.
Just right then and there.
Yeah, he said, I said, well, I was a little bit worried. He said, no, we need somebody up there in North Dakota that can play ball with these guys. And then he told me about his experience, how he had played ball when he was a singing evangelist.
So he was able to identify with what was going on.
Yeah.
So from Dean of the Boys, where did you go?
2 years there in North Dakota, then went to Lodi Academy, Lodi, California, for 3 years as dean. Well, 2 years as dean, and then registrar and principal, vice principal, and then to Newbury Park Academy for 3 years with Mr. Vern Roth, who had been the principal my first 2 years at Lodi, had moved to Newbury Park and called me down to Newbury, where I taught and took care of sales for the industries. We had poultry farm, dairy farm, brew factory, laundry.
Multiple industries.
Yeah.
Well, when did you go to Andrews? Because I remember when I was at Andrews, you were a well-established name there. When did you go to Andrews?
Well, from Newbury, I went to Atlantic Union College 7 years.
Okay.
Bob Reynolds was the president, great president. And then from there to Andrews University for 9 years.
And what were you doing at Andrews?
I went to Andrews as Dean of Students. And then they wanted to start a development program. And so I was Dean of Students for 2 years, and then I moved over, became Vice President for Public Relations and Development, and actually started the development program at Andrews.
At Andrews.
Yeah.
Which became a very, very successful program. And you were there for years, and then did you come directly here to Loma Linda from
yes,
Andrews?
I did. Yeah.
In fact, you came to Loma Linda, and then you were here for a while, and then you left, and then you ended up coming back.
Yes, in 1976, Dr. Olson invited me to Loma Linda, came here for 3 years, and then went to Glendale Adventist Medical Center for the next 9 years.
Again, working in the area of development.
Went to
philanthropy for the listening audience, all right.
That's right. Actually got the development program going there at Andrews. Horace Shaw, who was the Director of Public Relations.
I remember him.
Horace had gotten alumni groups going, which was a good thing. It was easy then to move in to development. So that worked out great. Then came out here to Loma Linda in 1976, stayed for 3 years. I was Vice President for Public Relations and Development for just the university. The Medical Center and the university were divided at that time.
At that point, yeah.
And it was not a good situation. I really didn't like that setup, in all honesty. So Vern Roth, who I'd worked for twice before, was now the president of Glendale Adventist Medical Center, and Vern invited me to join him there at Glendale. So for 9 years, I commuted. I went there as vice president for
So you were living here in the area and then went
Yeah.
back and forth up there. Okay.
125 miles round
Yeah.
trip a day.
Now, again, for our listening audience, when we talk about development, or sometimes it's called advancement, really what we're talking about is the philanthropic aspect of the fundraising arm of the institution.
That's right.
And you've been actively involved, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But now, everything's going well. Your health is going, you're doing very well. You've always been very actively involved and athletic and involved in sports. But a few years ago, it's really a number of years ago, you found that something was wrong with your body. What was that?
Well, I discovered I had a pain in my right side.
Mr. Invincible.
And I'd been on a trip back east to Washington, D.C., to the General Conference for a meeting. Came back, I still had that pain. And Lois and I were walking one night. We walked by Dr. and Dr. Herbert's home. They were out in the yard, and we're visiting with them. And all at once I moved a certain way, and that pain hit. And Ray noticed that. And he said, "What's wrong, Don?" I said, "Oh, I just got a little pain here under my rib cage." "How long have you had it?" So I thought for a moment and said, "Well, a little over 2 weeks. Want you in my office tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock. I said, "No, it's just a pain." "You be in my office at 8 o'clock. "Yes, Dr. Herbert, I'll be there." So I went up to his office and checked me over. He said, "I'm going to send you over for an ultrasound. I'm a little paranoid right now because the principal of the academy, Dr. Rhodes, I think his name was, just discovered that he had cancer of the kidney." So he sent me over to ultrasound and checked me over, and then they checked the other side. And they found out that I had a tumor on my left kidney.
A tumor on your kidney?
Yeah, it had nothing to do with this pain. So they sent me back to Dr. Herbert, and Ray says, "Who do you want to take out your kidney?"
Just like that?
Yeah, because Dr. Rouse had called Dr. Herbert and said, "I think you better get moving on this." So he
So
said,
it was malignant.
"Oh yeah,
Okay.
it's renal cell carcinoma, I think
right.
is what the
I mean,
official name is."
when you hear those words, you got cancer and you got kidney, and we only have a couple of them, and you
Yeah.
have cancer. How did that impact you?
Well, it scared me.
Oh man, I would think so.
Yeah. So Ray says, "Who do you want to take it out?" And I thought for a minute, and I said, "Well, how about Dr. Roger Hadley? It's a good choice." So he said, "Let me call Roger's office." So Roger was just leaving on a vacation for a week, but he was coming in the office. So they had me go down, and maybe a week or so later, they took the kidney out, took the whole kidney out. And that was 13 years or so ago. And then about 10 years later, a little over 10 years, the renal cell carcinoma came back in the right kidney.
So 13 years ago, you had it taken out, and then 10 years later, or
Yeah, 10 years later.
Okay, then
almost 11 years.
okay.
Roger Hadley, Dr. Hadley discovered, he was checking up on me, and he discovered that it had come back in my right kidney. They had done an ultrasound, and he said, "I got good news and bad news." He called me the next morning after the ultrasound. And I said, "Well, give me the bad news first." He said, "Well, the tumor's returned, the cancer's returned." And he said, "The good news is we caught it early." He said, "I want you to see Dr. Ruckel," because he's so busy, he got interested in administration. And so I went to see Dr. Ruckel. They took out about 10% of the kidney, caught it early on. So
10% of the remaining kidney. So you're functioning 90% then?
of one kidney.
Of
yeah.
one kidney, okay.
Yeah, but I don't even miss it.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay. Well, now, there's a few other body parts that begin failing.
Yes. A year later, my knee had gotten so bad, left knee, that finally Dr. Gustafson said, "We've got to put a total joint in." So did the total joint on the left knee. 6 months later, did it on the right knee. my daughter-in-law, Marilyn Pryor, who runs Prior Rehab, gave me my rehab. I thought she was going to kill me at first.
Working you.
But boy, it's the thing to do. And man, I just have had no
So you had
problem.
both knees replaced.
Yeah.
Probably too much golf over the years. Anyway, you had both knees replaced. Any other body parts?
Well, I now have a right shoulder joint, total joint. Dr. Pepitanico, who's the best at the total joint for the shoulders, did it a year ago, January. And I'm going to have the left one done, but I'm putting it off as long as I can.
So little by little, you're replacing the body parts.
Yeah, I inherited my mother's arthritis, and what happens, the cartilage wears out. And when it's gone, it's bone on bone. And I let the right shoulder go too long, really. But it's working great now. The total joint is very successful.
I mean, these are almost, as I'm listening to you, and I've known you over the years, these are almost like bumps in the road. I mean, they certainly haven't stopped you.
I walk 4 miles a day, 3 times a week at Drayson, and I walk the golf course, which is a good 4 miles.
Well, I mean,
2 or 3 times a week.
It's having a very, very positive impact upon you. Now, a few years ago, your wife encountered some challenges.
Yeah, I think that's 11 years ago in last May. Discovered that she had ovarian cancer. And it had moved along quite far by the time we were able to discover it.
So how did this impact you? I mean, it's one thing when you're dealing with your own little issues or big issues, but then your wife all of a sudden has what appears to be a pretty aggressive type of cancer.
I'd rather have my own.
Yeah,
It's
know.
tougher.
Yeah.
This caregiving is not easy. I pray for caregivers every night as well as those that are ill, because I'm telling you, I'm not a cook. And when you've got to cook
and take care of,
take care of it is all right, but the cooking I didn't like. But anyway, she's done great. She really has. It's been. She was operated on, I think it was 11 years ago this month. And Dr. Bob Wagner, Robert Wagner, did the operation. He's great. And he told my children and me that he was not able to get all of the cancer. Got all but just a tiny bit, but he says it's at a location, cannot get it. But he said, we'll give her chemo. And he said, we'll win this thing. So it gave us some encouragement. She had chemo where she went in the hospital every 2 weeks overnight for a 24-hour period, and they gave her chemo for about 10 months. And then after 10 months, he gave her a month or 6 weeks, opened her up again, did 43 biopsies, no cancer.
Wonderful.
And so then he gave her a choice. More chemo is kind of an insurance, or we'll just keep a close walk on you. And she chose the close watch. And we're all in total agreement with that. And she has done just great.
And she's going down and working out at the Drayson Center.
2 hours a day, about 5 times, sometimes 6 times a week.
Very, very actively involved.
Yes.
Now, Loma Linda, as you know, has an undergirding philosophy to make man whole. You've been a very integral part of this institution in the past, retired as one of the vice presidents, and have made a tremendous impact. And Don, I know a little bit about the tremendous impact that you have made on the philanthropic aspects of this. I know a number of years ago, in fact, when I first came to the institution, I think it was that year that you received the Trailblazer Award, which is the recognition from all of the counterparts across the North American division. You were the trailblazer, I mean, the outstanding leader. I know that probably a year or two earlier, you're recognized as the fundraiser here in the entire area around here. While you were here, a number of things took place, a number of buildings took place that you're directly responsible for. I think the Dell Webb Library was one of those.
Yes, we got the gift from the Dell Webb Foundation, which was made in 1979, just before I left to go to Glendale. and it was for $3,850,000. Now that doesn't sound like much money today.
But it was a lot.
We're talking about billions today.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of money back there, enough that it built a whole new library, the Del Webb Library at the university.
Here at the university.
Yes.
Okay.
And also remodeled the old library. They were attached. And gave us enough of that.
These were people that, you know, had one way or another been impacted by the institution or by the church, and then there was a dream that Dr. Behrens had of kind of expanding a few things, and I think it started out, some people had an idea of a swimming pool and maybe a gym, and what happened there?
Well, Dr. Behrens I came back to university in medical center, vice president for advancement for both, in 1988. And Dr. Norman Woods was the president at that time that called me back. And we had decided that we were going to build a swimming pool because back in the 80s, they tore the old swimming pool down, and administration promised the students that they would get a new swimming pool. Well, it hadn't happened yet, so Dr. Woods and I decided that we'd build a swimming pool, and then the second phase would be a new gymnasium, and third phase would be running track and outdoor courts.
There's going to be
baseball.
Phases. Yeah.
Yes, 3 phases.
Right.
Well, Dr. Lynn Behrens became president in 1990, as I recall the year. And she came by my office and asked for a little report, what we were doing, who we had, and how we were organized, and so forth, so she could get acquainted with our different departments. So I took the report in, and I don't know, a few weeks went by, and one day she stops by the office. And she said, Don, she said, I see where the next capital project is a swimming pool. And I explained what we had decided. But I said, you know, Lynn, we haven't gone so far, but what we can change. No, she said, I think it's a great idea. But she said, I don't like 3 phases. She said, I want to do it all in one phase. And I kind of golfed. Yeah, cool. And in one phase, and I said, Dr. Behrens, how much money are you talking? Well, she said, Don Percy had arrived on campus, and he was vice president for finance. And he said, Don and I have looked this over, and we think probably $16, $17 million. And, you know, that still sounds like a lot of money back there because we're raising money for endowment, other projects.
I mean, so many other things going on. So this is a huge amount of money. On
top of everything else. So I sat there for a minute. She said, is that possible? I said, she gave me time to think. I said, yes, it's possible provided we can get half the cost of the...
You had a lead gift.
Yes, from one donor, from the original donor. I said, if we can get $8 million of that, half of that, I said, we can raise the rest. Who do you have in mind?
Yeah, and one thing led to another. I see our time is slipping by, but you got a lead gift from
the Draysons.
From the Draysons.
Yeah, Ron and Gracie Drayson.
And they gave the lead gift, which has resulted in the Drayson Center.
Yeah.
But there are other projects that have been going on here. Were you involved in the Coleman Chanchung Pavilion?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I had retired. I had raised part of the money, retired, and came back to finish raising the rest of the money. So we raised the rest of the money for that whole complex on the north side of the hospital.
Well, we've got a listening audience here that many of the people love the institution. They love LLBN. And if you were to speak to the listening audience and tell them to support something, what would you tell them? I mean, I know you've always thought that cash in hand was far better than a gift in the future, but there are many different ways of giving to an institution.
Yeah. Well, there's certainly the outright gift, and you can make pledges over a 3-4 year period of time, which we do sometime on capital projects.
Sure.
And that's great. And you can give stock. Back when stock was worth a lot of money, but had been purchased very cheap.
Yeah.
We got one gift. David Caldwell, who worked for us at the medical center, turn a $10,000 gift into $1 million
Yes, I
gift
know.
through stock.
Yeah.
But anyway, deferred giving, planned giving, trusts, gift of property.
These are all options for either the university or the medical
Medical
center,
center.
or LLBN. LLBN has its own needs, and
That's right.
we thank our listening audience, the people that are praying for us and are supporting us. Well, Don, you are a wonderful example of somebody that's not only made an impact upon Loma Linda and the university and the medical center, but has made the impact has been made upon you and the healing ministry. You're a marvelous example of what happens when somebody takes care of themselves. And you're exercising regularly, and Lois is exercising regularly. You're a remarkable testimony of really to make man whole. Now, if you had a couple of minutes, if you have a minute here to tell the listening audience, many people this week have just found out they've been diagnosed with something, whether it's cancer or some other type of an illness. What would you tell them?
Well, I tell them see the best doctor that's available, follow the instructions, do your rehab, do a lot of praying. I really believe the success with my wife on ovarian cancer, which has been 11 years ago now, a lot of people were praying for her. But we had
around the country.
Yes, all around the country. We had a great physician in Dr. Robert Wagner, great care at the medical center, and a lot of people praying. And it makes a difference.
Yeah, what we're talking about is people being diagnosed. It's not a death sentence. There are options to explore. And for our listening audience, you know, there may be somebody out there right now that this week you've received some very sobering news. Don's an example of somebody that has not only been a survivor, but he's been a thriver. He's overcome. And I want to tell you that right now that God's got a plan for your life. If you'll look to Him, He's going to open and He's going to close doors. You'll be able to discern His will. He's got a plan for your life. Give Him an opportunity. He's waiting just right now. Until we meet next week, God bless you each one. Look to Him. He's waiting for you just now.